Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Dragon Ball Z. Thank God it's not the super version of BARDOCK. I know I said that to make some people mad, but I do think the original version is far superior. Question of the day real quick, let me know in the comment section below which version of BARDOCK is your favorite, the Dragon Ball Z version or the Dragon Ball Super Broly version. Let me know. To me, it's not even close, it's this one. And if you disagree, you're wrong. No, go ahead and tell me what you think. I'm curious what you guys think. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this briefly before we take it off the stand. This is one that I think pretty much anybody collecting this line was excited for. Everybody's wanted BARDOCK for forever. BARDOCK and Trunks are the two best characters in the series as far as popularity goes, and I don't know if that's true at all, I just made that up, but I know people were excited, and it looked like a good release. Is it a good release? I'm going to tell you yes, right off the bat, it is a good release. There are a few issues that we need to address, but overall it's pretty cool. So anyway, enough rambling. I've had way too much caffeine. Let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands, let's go to the top of his head, about 5.5 inches, let's say 6.5, 6 3/8 to the top of his hair, give or take, which is gonna put him at just about, let's say 14 centimeters to the head, roughly, and 16 to the top of the hair. And I know what you're thinking, we already did the question of the day, so we can jump right into it, and we can. So let's do a quick height comparison. There's Goku, there's your basic Goku and your basic BARDOCK. And he's a little bit shorter than Goku. Let me make sure Goku's not cheating. And he is not either, but let me stretch him just a little bit because I want to. You can stretch him at the torso, just enough, and then you get the same height. So you can scrunch him down just a bit if you want to. And that's going to happen right there. We'll talk about that. And it does look better like that, but you can make him taller too. Okay, so aesthetically speaking, they did a couple of things here which they don't often do, and they need to more often because it's great. First thing is the skin tone is a very matte finish. There's no gloss to his skin, which is wonderful. We do often get that, but it's not always the case, and it looks great. Now the other thing is we do often get very glossy figures for the pants and things. This guy doesn't have that. His pants are a nice satin to matte finish. Same thing for the red things on his arms and legs. That's very cool. The armor plating, they're all separate pieces, so there's no need for paint there. It's very clean. I mean, there's a little bit of paint on the edges, but we do have separate green pieces, and they are not glossy, so that's great. The only place we see any gloss is on the armor where it's intentional. You see it down here on the boots, and up here on his breastises and on the sides where it's the dark navy blue. Very nice. I love seeing the varied finishes on there. The tail is another finish too. It really brings the figure to life to not have everything be glossy. It looks wonderful, and the paint job that is on there, the white line work, is very clean. I'd like to see a little bit more shading on the blue armor, but it is technically shaded a little bit, and that looks pretty good. Would I like to see a wash or some actual deliberate paintwork on the lines on the green parts? Yes. But I think there's enough going on here that it's not necessary. I think this is one of their best aesthetic looking figures. That's like a Saiyan and not something crazy like Super Boo or something like that. Like, they did a really good job here. The face is well painted, the scar, the scouter is fantastic, the headband is well done. They were running on all cylinders for this. I can't think of anything that stands out as a problem aesthetically for me at this point. It's really well done. I guess technically you can still make the argument that the knees are too shiny or the elbows are too shiny, but that's because of the plastic that has to be used for those joints. So I'm not going to fault him for that. And they're the right colors. Like, you can see the elbows in here, the same color as the arms. So very well aesthetically, very well executed aesthetically, if I can speak English. So I'm going to give this guy a 9.9 out of 10. They could throw some more paint on there to make it look better, but it's so well done. They really put some time into thinking about putting this figure together. They didn't just throw out another one sort of situation. So very, very pleased with the aesthetic. Now for accessories, kind of. Let's start with the hands. We have 2 fist hands that come out in the package. We have 3 of the clenchy hands, 1 with a peg hole in it for his blast effect, which we'll get to, and then we have 2 wide open hands. That's not a wide variety of hands. It's basically 3 different options. So we could definitely have more hands. I know it's not necessarily necessary, but it would be nice. We do have the blast effect I mentioned, which is a very nice translucent blue with silver paint on it instead of white. Not sure how I feel about that. It's a nice silver though, so that's kind of cool. As for faces, we have the stern kind of frowny face that comes on him in the package. Then we have the smirking face, the teeth gritted face, and the yelling face. I think they're all pretty fantastic, except for the one that comes on him in the package. It's probably the weakest of the bunch, but they're all still really well executed. Very nicely done. Very, very nicely done. We have an alternate hair piece so that you can remove the scouter and the hair looks normal, so that's cool. But let's go ahead and talk about the scouter situation. It is a separate piece and it can be removed. The problem is it takes up where his ear would be. So they gave us an ear, just an ear that pegs into the side of his head. Technically that works. I personally hate that because you end up with a seam on his face if you're not using the scouter. I don't like that at all. We should have just got alternate faces with the ears and some without the ears. That's it. Like, it should have just been that. Otherwise, though, it's a decent batch of accessories. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I want to give it more, but having to swap out the ear with the scouter is just no good. It should be a separate set of plates. Okay, on to the articulation. The hair pops off way too easily, by the way, and you can pop the face off by posing the head. It's not as bad as Go Tanks or some other ones, but it does sometimes happen. So we're just going to take all this stuff off for now. And there you go. So you can see how buried that ball hinge is in the hair and the neck. You're going to be somewhat limited by that, and obviously you can't go that far forward because of the face. It doesn't rock well either, so it's going to be very finicky to get this to work. You'll get it in some poses, but especially with the bandana hanging down back here, his head is going to be significantly more limited than some of the other figures. The neck is on a ball peg, and it does work pretty well, and it hides itself pretty well. It doesn't stick up too high like we saw on, who was it? Vegito Blue, I think, had a really weird neck. His is decent. For the shoulders, we have our butterfly joint, which is one of the better looking butterfly joints. Hardly noticeable, hardly useful, but it does help some, and it's not ugly, so that's okay. But you get your shoulder with the ball peg that sits on that butterfly joint, and then you get your standard hinge. Perfectly functional. No issues with this guy's shoulder setup at all. Yeah, the butterfly could be better, but it doesn't hurt, and it works some, so that's fine. Bicep swivel is tight, but okay. Double jointed elbow works just fine. You do get a little bit more of a gap down here than we normally do. They tweaked the design a little bit, but it is still functional. I guess that'll be okay. The wrists, on the other hand, we have our little ball hinges in here, but because of his wraps, if you want to call them that, you really get no range. You're not going to be able to pose them too much. So expect to not be able to pose his wrists. I don't think that's a big deal, but it is a deal. So in here we have a hinge and a single ball peg. That's almost always how they're designed now, but I couldn't quite see, so I figured let's just risk breaking it. So this is a hinged cup that takes the ball peg, and then that's our big ball peg. So that's why you're able to extend him some to make him taller if you want to. It doesn't really kill the proportions too much. Let's go ahead and throw the face back on there. But he does look better shorter because that's how he's supposed to be. But yeah, you can definitely give him a little bit of height without destroying the look of the figure if you want to. But that hinge does allow him to lean back. You get a gap, a pretty significant gap in there. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. It's very dark, but it does lean forward pretty well, side to side. This is one of the more functional joints, but you'll see you have a high chance of scuffing this up, so be very careful as you are leaning him forward. But he can lean forward pretty darn well using that combo of joints, so that's cool. I like the torso. I'm not a huge fan of the hinge combo. I don't think it's necessary, but it does work well enough. For the lower torso, you get almost nothing out of it other than a swivel. The tail is just a floating piece, which is pretty clever. I like that they did that. It doesn't actually connect anywhere. You have a tail tuft chunk. You have a chunk of tail right there, and then just the part wrapped around that floats. I like that. For the armor, it's just hinged pieces that connect to up here, so they'll move like this. And then, like I said, you get a little bit of wiggle, but not much. So it's good enough. It's good enough. The fact that you can move his lower torso without anything getting in the way is pretty good, because I don't know how else they could do that and make it work. So I like that. Now bringing the legs out to the side, no issue, and that's pretty darn far, and I don't notice any tightness or noticeable looseness. Bringing them forward, it still gets goofy with these. That's just the design of the character, but it does work. Going back, not as well, but it works well enough. You get your thigh swivel. Double jointed knee works really well, and the ankles are double ball pegs, They don't go very far forward at all. They go back pretty far, and you get a decent enough sort of ankle rocker. They're fairly basic ankles. Toe joint is acceptable, but not altogether useful. So there's some stuff on him that works pretty well. Nothing that really stands out as bad other than the questionable utility of the neck, or head, I guess I should say. There goes a scouter. Let's just leave it. So yeah, it's 8 out of 10. It's one of the better Saiyan sets of articulation. We've seen better in some spots, but overall, this guy's got a really solid batch of articulation. I don't have any significant gripes about it other than, let's see, it's just the ankles, really. The rest is pretty much good, and the neck, and those aren't huge deal. Yeah, I like it. So 8 out of 10 for the articulation. Time for the final verdict on this guy. I think it's one of their stronger releases in recent history. It could have been not good, but they did a lot of the good things like flat paint / glossy paint where it needs to be. The sculpts are really clean. The plastic's really well done. It's uniform. I like it. I don't think there's a lot objectively to dislike, but I personally do like it a whole bunch too. I think you guys will too. I'm going to give it a final verdict of 9 out of 10. It's pretty good. Other than the ankles and neck articulation and the weird ear situation, it's up there as one of their better releases. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. Let me know what you thought about the figure, and let me know what you thought about the review by giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.